Hi everyone, and welcome to the following of the mswallet.sol or multi-signature wallet smart contract. So in this part we're going to write the other functions related to this smart contract. Now I'm going to write function related to execution of the contract. So execution of the transaction, execute transaction. So we'll get uint 256 transaction ID, uint 256 underlying transaction ID, and it's public payable and only owner kind of smart contract. Only owner, as you can remember, was the modifier that we set for a number of our functions. So as you can remember, this function create transaction is also only owner. So we enter the function, and there is this requirement at the beginning. So it requires that the transaction is approved with the transaction ID given. So is transaction approved? So approved with the transaction. So let's check the spelling. Is transaction approved, right? So it gives the transaction ID. And otherwise shows transaction not approved. The next line requires that the transaction is not executed with this transaction ID, and otherwise we will show to the user transaction already executed. So require that is transaction executed with the specific transaction ID. And actually here this is square bracket with this transaction ID. Otherwise transaction already executed. Transaction already executed. So now afterward we will set the is transaction executed of the transaction ID to true. Is transaction executed of the transaction ID equals to true. And then address payable of the recipient, payable recipient equals payable address uint 160 get transaction recipient, get transaction recipient. So this is a function that we'll write. So up to now it's not defined, but later this is our last function to be written. This is smart contract. So now you cannot find it, you just need to write it down, but later in the future we'll add it. So we'll get the underlying transaction ID. Okay, and uint 256 amount equals uint 256 amount equals get transaction amount, get transaction amount, and here we'll get the transaction ID, underline transaction ID. Here we go, and recipient.transfer amount, recipient.transfer amount. So we'll transfer the amount to the recipient and emit the event related to transaction executed. Transaction executed, and it will get the transaction ID and the message.sender, msg.sender, and there we go. So the next function that we're going to be writing is a function called isTransactionApproved. So function is transaction approved, and this will get uint256 transaction ID, and this is public, view returns bool, so right now we have uint256 approval count, so we'll define a variable uint256 approval count, which equals to 0, and write a for loop for uint256 I equals 0 semicolon I smaller than owners.length, I smaller than owners.length, semicolon, and I plus plus. So open the brackets, and here we've got the address owner equals owner I, address owner equals to address I, owner I, owners I. So here we go, and if approved transaction ID of the owner exists, then approval count plus plus. So if is approved the transaction ID of the owner exists, then approval count plus plus. And here we go. Let's get outside of the if statement and another if statement. If approval count greater or equal than the required signatures, then return true. Approval count greater or equal than the required signatures, so then return true. And in the end, return false. So that's it for this for loop. And oh, actually we should return false outside of the for loop, right? So return false. And there we go. So this function is also finished. Now let's go after the next function. So that's it for this part of our video, this part of our tutorial of the video. So the rest of the functions will be written in the next video, and afterward we'll compile the project, and in the video after the next video we will also deploy the contract and test it. So that's it for this part of our video, and until the next one, goodbye.